I think that it really varies depending on the types of audience that you're trying to connect with. Accessibility is important, I think, like an ability for people to come in at a level that they're comfortable with. Clearly communicatable actions are very important, so that the player understands what it is they're doing at each step along the way, whether or not that's the kind of the variables that they're tweaking and the rules that they're tweaking, or whether it's the choices that they're making within a narrative, as long as those things are very clear. The other thing is clearly developed skills that the player can evolve and get better at, or learn to understand, not necessarily improve at, but as long as the game's rules, the player can learn to internalize them as they play through the game. And also a clear sense of an action and reaction, not necessarily risk and reward, but the player feeling like the choices that they made and the actions that they've taken actually have an impact either on the systems or on the fiction. And those things together, I think, are probably the most important thing, especially for documentary makers, that people can very clearly see how the choices that they make impact and how those connect to the story that the documentary or the game is trying to tell. That's the sort of thing, like, that process would come from the scoping of it. If it was part of a broader strategy, if it had a film component and perhaps an online video component, or there might be a lot of articles written about, you might have a website that drew all of these things together and the game would just sit there. If it was part of a longer form experience, you know, maybe you wanted to connect it to a social media platform, or you wanted to draw in people's contributions about it and make it more evolutionary, then you would sort of need a game that could be updated. But if it was just a game that was about communicating that one idea that the documentary was, then you could just put it on a website and leave it. Again, it would be about what is the experience that you're trying to construct, and how does the game fit into that overall experience. That becomes a question of how do you want people to play with this, and what does that audience engagement mean for the experience? Because people sitting at their browser playing with something on a website is a very different experience from people being able to interact with something on their phone, but they both have, you know, storytelling abilities or communication abilities. So something on a website, you can connect to the wider web, so people can sort of tab out and go and do some research on something, or connect with other parts of the website that it's situated on. But if something is running on an iPhone or distributed through the App Store, suddenly you have access to all of this locative information, so you can actually take people on a physical journey, you know, through a space, or you can connect with some of the social media aspects of those devices, or with their camera, so you could perhaps do some augmented reality technologies. So it's about, does that platform, or does that device enhance or detract from the story that you're trying to tell? You know, if you're telling a story about a city, or you're creating a documentary about a city, it'd be really interesting to have people actually move through that city and have your GPS, you know, upload or download stories or like little parts of games that people can play around that space and connect with the kind of the physicality of the documentary in a way that a website, you know, probably couldn't. Or if you're telling a story about, you know, people engaging, you know, have them upload pictures that they might have taken and tell their own stories and add them to some aspect of the website or to the game as well.